we're going to bring John in for football at 4. And, of course, John, we've heard your take on this all week long that I don't know why they're playing him. I don't know, why they would rush him. But are you in the same camp now that Brandon Brooks will play in the game on Sunday? Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles didn't list him as questionable, and that means he's going to play.
Wow.
He's not even on the injury report. So it remains to be seen how much, if he's going to play the entire game. But, yeah, this will be less than 8 months off an Achilles tear for a 350-pound guy. So, yeah, color me surprised.
I would.
I mean, Brandon
will color you surprised because I know all week you've kind of said I'll be, a little surprised if he actually ends up playing. And that being said, they're going to go into the game with their entire offensive line intact, right? You're going to have Johnson back. You got Brooks back. Kelsey's kind of been out, but he's not injury-related. Isaac Seumalo and Jason Peters. That will be your starting offensive line on Sunday.
Yeah, and also tremendous depth with Halapoulivaati Vaitai, Andre Dillard will certainly be up. It'll be interesting to see if they dress an interior lineman who can play center. Obviously, Vaitai has been playing right guard, but
right.
Center is the only position he doesn't play. In theory, if something would happen to Jason, you could always move Isaac Seumalo there, or you could activate Nate Herbig, the undrafted rookie. So that probably is the only question mark. Who would be the interior backup at center? And, hey, well, I mean, Brandon has been working for this, and I've made the comparison to Carson Wentz. Carson wanted to play last year, different injury. Every situation is different. The Eagles were very, very cautious with that injury. I don't know if you can say they're not being as cautious because Brandon has pushed for this, but just from a common sense standpoint, that has been my question mark. But the Eagles will lean on the fact that he's cleared. The doctors have cleared him. So then they're going to put him out there and they're going to play, and that's obviously a positive development because that's among the best right guards in the league, and this is probably the best offensive line in football.
Yep, and they're going up against a defensive front. Kerrigan especially has given them all sorts of issues. And how do you see that matchup on Sunday? I would think that's one of the key battles in this game is this Eagles offensive line, which is looked at as a strength against really the strength of the Washington Redskins as a whole is I guess, Kerrigan and that pass rush, that defensive front.
Yeah, we've seen Ryan Kerrigan create problems for the Eagles for years. He's been one of those guys. And Lane Johnson's always, of course, great for a good quote. And somebody asked him earlier in the week, what's it like playing against Ryan Kerrigan? He just said it sucks. And then
what did he call Kerrigan? A bundle of blades or something?
Yeah, rolling ball of butcher blades. That was Mike Gross.
I wasn't too far off.
No, you weren't.
So, I mean, this team has tremendous respect for Ryan Kerrigan. But I will say, behind the scenes, this team is very, very confident. One of the reasons why is because that is the strength probably of the Redskins is their front, particularly the front seven and Kerrigan and Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne. Those guys are really, really talented. But the Eagles have veteran players, and they're confident, and they think they match up better than most teams against that group. And conversely, they're very, very excited about their defensive line against that Washington offensive line, specifically the left side.
Hey, I want to ask you, John, before we kind of dive deeper into this game, anything from last night's game make you kind of say, I've changed my outlook, or somebody wants some big money in the game over here. Woo! Actually, I think someone just scored a goal in a soccer game, which never happens.
No, that's very rare.
Anyway, John, anything that happened in the game last night that made you maybe change your outlook on how you would, kind of break down the game on Sunday?
No, I mean, I've been talking for a long time, and Ryan can can probably confirm this, and the fact that I've said.
Are you taking a shot at all my vacation time?
He's taking a shot at both of us, I think.
Well, you probably don't remember because you haven't been here as much. But I mean, I've been talking about it forever that things are going to be sloppy the first couple of weeks, and
John and I have battled all summer long.
Yeah, not just in Philadelphia, all over the NFL. You saw it. I mean, that was ugly, and that was sloppy, and defenses are going to be ahead of offenses. Doug Peterson said that today, probably. So, I mean, if you're looking at this game and you are saying, what do you be concerned about, you do look to that Washington defense and saying, well, the Eagles are probably going to be kind of sloppy because none of the starters played all that much. Carson didn't play at all. The offensive line pretty much certainly didn't play together. So I do expect some sloppiness. I think ultimately from the Eagles standpoint, the thought process is they just have more talent. There'll be sloppiness on the other side as well. So you expect to come out with a win. But, yeah, I think there's going to be certain fans upset because, look, if you don't prepare for something, and that's what's going on in the NFL. They don't prepare for these early games because the goal has become health over preparation. So if you don't prepare for something, you're probably not going to handle it well.
All right, John, having said all of that, if you're the Washington Redskins and you're sitting there right now trying to, draw up a game plan and a scheme defensively, is there anything that, you try to focus in on? What's the quote-unquote best blueprint to stop this Eagles offense if you're the Washington Redskins?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think this is going to be the question for every defensive coordinator, not just Greg Minuski. The Washington DC is the fact that, A, the Eagles got a ton of playmakers. If you shut somebody down, somebody else is probably going to jump up and hurt you. But I do think you have to go about it sort of like Bill Belichick does, and you identify the two best players and try to shut them down and make lesser players beat you. So I think that's the goal of most defensive coordinators and how they handle it. And with the Eagles, I still think that is Zach Ertz, number one, and Alshon Jeffrey, number two. And you force somebody else to beat you. What might help the Redskins a little bit is that Deshaun Jackson was joking a little bit about the broken finger and maybe he's just going to be a decoy. Maybe he is going to be a decoy because at practice on Thursday, he didn't catch the football during individual drills with the other receivers because he's nursing that finger. So maybe you look at it from that standpoint. You say, well, Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders and Nelson Aguilar and Dallas Goedert are good players, but they're not proven players like Zach and Alshon. At least to that level, and you try to force those types to beat you.
All right, John, so narrowing in on those key players and key matchups, what are your key matchups for the game on Sunday? If the Eagles win blank matchup, they're going to look really good, maybe 3-5 or whatever you have.
Well, the problem from Washington's perspective is it's going to be tough to score points offensively. So I think the only way they win this game is not only does the defense have to play lights out and limit what projects to be a really good offense, but maybe you are helped out by that sloppiness factor we're going to see all across the league. So maybe that helps. And the second point is you're probably going to have to get a defensive touchdown because I don't know how they're going to score points. They just don't have any. And people will point to Case Keenum because of the NFC Championship game. That's unfair. He can make plays, but he doesn't have receivers on the other end to make them for him. Darius Geis is unproven. Seems like Jay Gruden is not enamored with Adrian Peterson at this stage of his career, and he probably shouldn't be, so that's probably right. Jordan Reed, from every indication from down there, they expect him to play. but I mean, he's always a feather's touch away from another concussion. Yeah, I don't know how they score. I really don't.
Yeah.
So
well,
it's going to be difficult for him. I will say real quick, the one thing is when you play a bad team in this league, you want to play them late. You don't want to play them early because the Redskins don't know how bad they're going to be just yet. So they're going to be fighting and clawing.
Yeah. All right, I want to go back and take a look at a couple of things here. One, the Eagles' injuries on that defensive side of the ball, you talk about playing a bad team early. That's where we talked to John Kine last hour. They do kind of realize, hey, Fletcher hasn't played a lot. Barnett hasn't played a lot. Bradham hasn't played a lot. McLeod hasn't played a lot. Darby hasn't played a lot. Like, it does seem like that's a real factor in this game that the Eagles – you're a step slow because you haven't played in the preseason. Now you're 2 steps slow because you're coming off of an injury, too.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And if you were playing a team that had a ton of weapons, I would say there's a big concern. But I don't know how the Redskins take advantage of it. Like if this is the Atlanta Falcons, for instance, and you have Matt Ryan throwing to Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu and Calvin Ridley, yeah, I'd be really concerned because of what went on in the preseason and guys not playing and guys maybe not being ready to play. But again, I look at that Redskins team and I say, well, who's going to be able to take advantage of that? And I just don't see anybody who can do that.
When you're talking about the Redskins, John, I feel like the fan base doesn't know a whole lot about them. Like who's someone flying under the radar? Who's someone that a player?
Well, I think from their standpoint, I mean their defense has a chance to be really good, really, really good. I mean they've used first-round picks on 3 consecutive years on defensive line, and we mentioned Jonathan Allen, Teron Payne, Montez Sweat. Who's an edge rusher, and they play 3-4 with Kerrigan. So you add Kerrigan to that mix. They're really, really talented up front, just from a standpoint of skill set and guys who can really just, out athleticize you and just they might be better than what you have. And then they signed Landon Collins. You know what he's been able to do as a box safety from the Giants. Josh Norman as a corner, the Eagles have tremendous respect for. I think the front seven's better than the secondary, but nonetheless, if they get things going in the right direction, if Minuski schemes well, they have a chance to have a top 10 defense. That's how much talent they have on that side of the football. So, yeah, I agree, Ryan. A lot of people are looking at this game and putting a check mark in the win column. And, hey, I think the Eagles are going to win the game. But as I always warn, this is the NFL. This isn't college where you have those lopsided matchups. Every single team in this league has really, really good players. The Redskins do too. Most of them are on the defensive side.
Okay, so let's speak of the defense. Nigel Bradham, number one, will he be out there? And number two, is there any penalty that is coming from all this stuff that has happened over the last couple of days? I know you asked specifically, John, Doug Peterson, that today.
Yeah, and the Eagles are going to keep the punishment internal, which is no surprise. They tend to do that. There's no question he's going to be fined. I think the question is, do they do that old college trick, maybe sit him down for a series, sit him down for a quarter as sort of a smack on the hand? But Doug did confirm he's going to play, so he's not going to be suspended. He's not going to miss the game. Again, they might do that cursory thing of benching him for a little bit of time, but he'll be out there, and you can argue. I mean, there's certain things going on in this league, Antonio Brown most notably in Oakland, where he's going from suspended to playing in 24 hours. Crazy thing. I mean, the fact, look, I'm taking Nigel. Nigel is a great guy. And I'm taking him at his word that he was really, really sick. But he's also 30 years old. He's been in this league for a long time. He knows you got to inform the team that you're sick and you can't make it. You just can't not show up.
Yeah, it
So
seems that almost
I
if Bradham was a higher profile player, and I'm not suggesting that he's like he's a starter and an important guy, but if this was anybody who was like a skill position guy or something and they just said, I just didn't show up and I didn't call, I feel like it would be a lot bigger news nationally almost, right?
They've kept it under the wraps, I feel
like. Can you imagine if
Deshaun
Jackson didn't call?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Well, I do think it is big Logan. I think one of the reasons that it didn't get more traction nationally is because of Antonio Brown, because that's so outrageous. I think that kind of pushed everything to the background. I think
but John, you've been covering the league for a long time. Do you remember a scenario where a guy just didn't show up to a game and didn't tell anybody?
I would have to go deep into the files for that. I do not recall. I'm sure it's happened. I mean, actually, Demetrius Underwood, I was in Minnesota when he got drafted. He was a first-round draft pick. Nobody remembers him because he went AWOL. He came to camp for like 2 days and then left. And
isn't that a credit to the Eagles, John? Like the fact that we're asking you, why isn't this as big of a story as it should be?
Well, hey, I mean, you'd have to talk, I guess, more toward the fan base about that. I think it's a big story. Everybody's covered it. We're asking questions. We're trying to figure out what's going on. Certainly the people there, the reporters, are covering it, have certainly framed it with, I think, the proper relevance that it should have. I mean, we know from talking to fans and dealing with fans, I mean, they don't want to hear about negative stuff a lot of time, and that's negative. So especially with week 1 coming up, everybody wants positive. But the story's being covered, I think. So I think from that standpoint, I think it's more of the fan base kind of shrugging their shoulders. But I do think it's a bigger deal. And I do think maybe they should have been a little bit harsher, to be honest, because you can't do that. And you don't want to set that precedent, because what if somebody – we talked about preseason all summer. What if a bunch of guys playing the Jets next year in weeks 4? What if they say, you know what? I don't feel like going.
Right, I'm in the Hamptons.
Yeah. Well, they've kind of set the precedent that they're going to fine you and not suspend you, and you're still going to be able to play. So maybe you do go to the Hamptons.
Well, it's almost like it's such a bizarre story that teams just take for granted that no one is just like not going to show. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like I can't think of an example ever of a guy of someone just being like, "Hey, we had a game tonight." Like I always laugh. Like you have that girl that you date, and like I do the radio show, and the Eagles are eliminated, and it's like, well, you don't really need to be there. They're already out. Like girlfriend who doesn't understand how important sports are to like the league, and like, hey, your team's already eliminated. You don't need to be at practice every day. You don't have to be at the game this Sunday. Your team's 2-10. Why do you need to go to the game this week,
Yeah. Well, it is. It's kind of and that's why I said, because of Nigel's where he is in his career and how long he's played, I mean, he understands. So there's something more to this story.
Right,
and
that's my point.
Not checking your phone in 2019 is not a reasonable excuse.
No, and by the way the Eagles handled it, which I kind of mentioned yesterday on the show, if you don't think something else is going on, you don't immediately check flights to Miami to see if Nigel has gone AWOL and left. So, maybe it's contract related. Maybe he's unhappy about some other thing. Maybe it's a personal problem. Maybe it was just as simple as Hurricane Dorian and bearing down on Florida at one point, and he's got family down there. There's a lot of things that, and I always talk about fans not realizing that players are human beings at times, and they have real-world problems, and that's piled on the stress of trying to perform at a high level on the field.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is something else was going on. I don't think there's any question about that.
Okay, I want to leave you with this because Doug, I thought, said something today that was definitely ear-perking, newsworthy, and Ryan brought it up earlier, and we attacked him a little bit. And the question was, are there things that you could try to do to get your offense in a rhythm because they did not play in the preseason? And he actually said we can rely a little more on the run game. So, John McMullen, is Carson Wentz going to get under center and turn around and start handing the ball off left and right early on in this game?
Well, sometimes during these press conferences, Doug goes on autopilot. I think he flicked the switch and went on autopilot.
Right, this is like the fifth time he's been out there this week.
Yeah, and you start talking cliches and you start going back. And he also talked about the short passing game and getting Carson in a rhythm. Look, anybody who's watched Doug's offense knows what he likes to do. Anybody who knows where Doug comes from and Andy Reid knows what they like to do, and that's the modern NFL. You pass to set up the run, not the opposite. That's what this league is. They just paid the quarterback $108 million. I don't think they're going to rely on a second-round rookie running back. The stars are all receivers. Zach Ertz, we talked about, Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Nelson Aguilar, Dallas Goedert. What do you think they're going to do?
That's why we attacked Ryan.
No, Tom, you don't remember. I didn't say that. I asked you guys if there's a potential that they want to hand it off a little bit. Everyone in the world, John, is saying they're going to go deep, first play to D-Jax, they're going to sling the rock. And I said, well, maybe you establish the run. I don't mean pound it 40 times, but hand it off a little bit more and then open it up a little bit.
Well, I don't necessarily think automatically they're going to go deep to Deshaun on play one. He does have a broken finger. I mentioned the decoy aspect. That could play into it. They might run the football on the first play, but I mean, as an identity for this offense, there's certainly going to be a pass-heavy offense. That's just Doug's DNA as a play caller. And as I said, all their stars are generally geared towards the passing game. And hey, I mean, I think why everyone thinks they're going to go to Deshaun on the first play deep is because it's happened before in every one of his stops, and they want to get everybody jacked up on opening day, and they might go that route.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think that really matters in an NFL game where you're playing 60 minutes. Doesn't, what you do on the first play is not going to win or lose the football game for you.
John McMullen, of course, the Eagles and Redskins. He will be at Lincoln Financial Field. You'll hear him with more all weekend long. Pete Thompson Show, I'm sure, the Tony Bruno extravaganza, and, of course, right here on the Sports Bash every day for football at 4. But before he goes out the door, John McMullen's official pick for Sunday is?
I have the Eagles winning 30-17.
30-17. Eagles is the score for John McMullen.
That's a cover.
And that is a cover for the Birds. All right, John, we will be listening this weekend for more insight. And as things emerge, of course, Eagles and Redskins, a big rivalry game to kick it all off. Thanks, pal.
All right, thanks, guys.